a young woman vanished from her home in the middle of the night, leaving behind all of her belongings. As soon as police began their investigation, they found themselves in what felt like a real-life horror movie. With each passing day, more disturbing and unexpected details came to light, slowly revealing a chilling picture, until the terrifying truth was finally uncovered. Ellen Wake was born on May 17, 1995, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Later on, she moved with her parents and sister to Ohio, where the family settled in West Chester Township. From a young age, Ellie stood out for her creativity. She loved making little crafts and decorations out of anything she could find. She also had a thing for bright, quirky clothes that always made her stand out from the crowd. She felt most at peace in nature, climbing trees, stringing up a hammock, and just soaking in the quiet. She could spend hours like that. After finishing high school, Ellie went to a local college and got her cosmetology license. Not long after, she landed a job as a hairdresser. By the summer of 2018, 23-year-old Ellie was living on her own and still working at the hair salon. On Sunday, July 29th, a friend came over to visit her. They hung out in the backyard for a while, chatted, and then he left. After that, Ellie texted with a few of her friends. But the next day, she suddenly stopped replying. Her family and friends kept trying to reach her, but there was no response. When they called, they realized her phone had been turned off. A little while later, Ellie's mom drove over to her house and saw her car still parked by the garage. All of her personal belongings were inside, except for her phone. It didn't make any sense, and Ellie's mom immediately went to the police. She also told them right away that she had a strong suspicion about who might be behind her daughter's disappearance. Ellie had told her multiple times about an anonymous man who had been stalking her for months. It all started in February 2018, about 6 months before Ellie disappeared. A strange man began messaging her on social media, and at first, he seemed harmless. But then, his messages started getting creepier. He asked her bizarre questions about her thoughts on mass murders, and just generally acted weird. Ellie tried blocking him, but every time she did, he'd pop back up with a new account under a different name or message her through a different platform entirely. But that was just the beginning. In April, Ellie received a video from him, filmed late at night through one of her windows. In the clip, she was in her kitchen, quietly putting stickers into a scrapbook. Judging by the angle, the video had been shot from less than a yard away from the window. But that wasn't even the worst part. Whoever was behind the camera was naked and pleasuring himself while filming her. After that, he sent more photos and videos just like it. Ellie was terrified. This man wasn't just stalking her online, he was trespassing on her property. Somehow, he had found out where she lived, even though she had never shared her address publicly. Eventually, she went to the police and gave them everything she had, his accounts, the messages, and those disturbing videos he'd filmed right outside her house. But, the local department's response was, to put it mildly, underwhelming. Instead of opening a case under a statute that recognized Ellie was in real danger, they brushed it off as simple telephone harassment. Investigators did try to figure out who was behind the fake accounts, but they quickly hit a wall. It turned out the man had been using virtual phone numbers from a website that required a court order to release any user information. And apparently, the police didn't feel like jumping through those hoops, so they shelved the case. They didn't even attach the photos or videos he'd taken through Ellie's window to the file, even though that was a clear violation of the law. In the end, the only advice they gave her was to avoid going out after dark, keep her curtains closed, and maybe take a self-defense class. Ellie was devastated by the fact that the police had done virtually nothing and started to feel completely powerless in the face of what was happening. She told all her friends and family about the situation, and none of them could understand why the police were just standing by. Meanwhile, the messages from her stalker kept coming, no matter how many times Ellie tried to cut off contact. Eventually, the constant stress pushed her into serious anxiety and depression. She couldn't focus on anything except the fear this man had instilled in her, and the lack of support from law enforcement only made things worse. Her mom also tried reaching out to the police. They did send a patrol car, but the officers simply drove down the street, stayed for about 5 minutes, and then left. Things continued like this until May. One day, while Ellie was talking to a friend about the whole situation, he managed to trace one of the stalker's fake Snapchat accounts back to a real social media profile. It turned out the account belonged to a man named Michael Strauss. Ellie immediately recognized this name. They had briefly dated when she was 17, but hadn't really kept in touch since then. As soon as she realized who was behind it all, Ellie went back to the police. But, as expected, they still didn't take any real action. They never questioned Michael, never warned him, and basically did nothing to protect her. So, once again, Ellie was left completely unprotected, even knowing her stalker's identity didn't change a thing. And the messages didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. Michael started sending direct threats. Ellie became terrified of staying home alone, so her friends took turns spending the night at her place. But, on the day she stopped responding to messages, no one had been able to stay over. She had asked the same friend who had come by earlier that day, but he was dealing with a bad toothache and didn't want to be a burden, thinking he wouldn't be able to sleep anyway. Now that Ellie had vanished, the police finally got to work and started by looking into her phone activity. They discovered that her phone stayed in the house until around 3 a.m., and then it was turned off. Investigators also got access to her social media accounts and found that, shortly before she disappeared, Ellie had been messaging with someone named Nate. She'd asked him to come over and he agreed. He also mentioned that he wouldn't be bringing his phone and said he'd just knock on the door when he got there. But, according to the messages, Ellie later canceled those plans. Still, when detectives started digging into Nate's account, they uncovered a disturbing twist. It was registered to a virtual phone number from the same website the stalker had used. Ellie's friends also told police that she had been talking to Nate for about 6 months, but had never actually met him in person. Based on all this, investigators suspected that Nate never existed, and it had been the stalker all along. What made it even worse was that Ellie had told him she was home by herself. Soon after, detectives got a warrant and requested all the data linked to the stalker's fake accounts. As expected, everything pointed directly to Michael Strauss. And notably, all those fake accounts went completely silent the same night Ellie disappeared. Detectives started digging into Michael's background, and what they found was alarming. He had a lengthy criminal record that included burglary, public indecency, harassment, and fraud. After one arrest, he'd even been ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation, which resulted in a court-mandated year of counseling. But, despite everything he'd done, Michael had never spent a single day behind bars. Police paid him a visit, hoping to get some answers, but Michael denied everything, and they left empty-handed. A few days later, though, investigators secured a warrant and searched his home, seizing all of his devices. The analysis revealed that Michael's phone had pinged near Ellie's house on the night she disappeared. They also found proof that he was behind the fake accounts. In fact, just 53 minutes after Ellie's phone had gone dark, Michael created a brand new account and began messaging a different woman, once again posing as an anonymous stalker. Inside his house, officers made even more disturbing discoveries. They found Ellie's driver's license, a clump of her hair, and a stone from the necklace she always wore. They also found a pair of real handcuffs bolted to his bed. And that wasn't all. A deeper look into Michael's online activity revealed some truly chilling details. 4 months before Ellie vanished, he had searched, "How long does a human body smell?" 3 weeks before, he was looking up cases of missing women in the area. A week later, he Googled, "How to survive in prison." He also repeatedly searched for Ellie's social media profiles and checked out pages of local businesses near her home. Just 10 hours before she went missing, Michael read an article about a serial killer known as the Cincinnati Strangler. A few days later, he looked up another serial killer, then searched how to delete photos from recognized sites. At that point, the evidence was overwhelming. Everything pointed to Michael's involvement in Ellie's disappearance, and detectives were almost certain she was no longer alive. But they still didn't know where her body was until they discovered something interesting. On Michael's phone, investigators also found a screenshot from Google Maps. It showed an open field not far from his house. Cell tower data also confirmed that his phone had been in that area on the night Ellie vanished. So, police headed out there with search dogs, and it didn't take long for them to find human remains, hidden deep in the tall grass. By then, nearly a month had passed since Ellie went missing and the body was in an advanced state of decomposition. Still, forensic experts were able to confirm her identity through dental records. It was Ellie. As for her cause of death, the level of decomposition made it hard to say for sure. There were no obvious signs of trauma, but the evidence suggested she may have been strangled. On top of that, Michael had specifically researched serial killers who used strangulation as their method of killing, so detectives believed it was a strong possibility. Right after that, Michael was arrested and brought in for questioning. This time, he changed his story, admitting that he had killed Ellie. But the version he gave was just bizarre. According to Michael, Ellie had actually agreed to film a disturbing adult video with him, something involving torture, which he planned to sell to one of his regular clients for a hefty payout. But during the shoot, he claimed things spiraled out of control. He said he didn't realize how much force he was using and ended up accidentally strangling her. Michael also claimed that the entire thing was caught on camera. After realizing Ellie was dead, he said he watched the footage and then tossed the memory card. Naturally, detectives didn't believe a word of it. His story didn't match the facts, and with the mountain of evidence against him, prosecutors were already in a strong position to secure a conviction. Based on everything they'd gathered, the most likely scenario was that Michael lured Ellie out of her house, possibly by threatening her, and then brought her back to his place. Forensic experts confirmed that her wrists had been bound with zip ties. Once inside, Michael handcuffed her to his bed and killed her, then later dumped her body in a field near his home. But investigators still had another big question to answer. Could Michael be connected to any other crimes? Because, aside from the overwhelming amount of evidence in Ellie's case, his devices revealed something else: dozens of photos and videos of random women, most of them jogging in local parks or walking alone. In many of the clips, Michael was either secretly filming them from his car or following them on foot with a hidden camera. When detectives asked about the footage, Michael didn't deny anything. He admitted he liked recording attractive women whenever he got the chance, but insisted he never actually hurt anyone. Still, the search history on his phone told a darker story. He looked up things like, "Where do women jog in Westchester?" and would also search for news about attacks on female joggers in the area. Police started digging into other unsolved cases in the area and soon came across one that closely matched Michael's pattern. About 6 months before Ellie's murder, a woman was attacked while jogging in a nearby town called Mason. An unknown man ran up behind her and tried to drag her into the woods, but she managed to fight him off and escape. What stood out was that Michael had Googled this exact case multiple times, according to his search history, so detectives were nearly certain he was responsible. But, without physical evidence, they couldn't charge him. They also began to wonder if Michael could be linked to another unsolved murder from back in 2011. The killing of 21-year-old college student Caitlin Markham, whose story we've already covered on this channel. She disappeared under eerily similar circumstances, and her body was found nearly 2 years later. Police have never identified a suspect, but now they started to seriously consider Michael. Digging deeper, they found out that Caitlin had told friends about being stalked by a man she didn't know. But then came a truly unexpected lead. On one of Michael's old social media pages, police found a photo from a music festival. He was standing with a group of people, and one of them was Caitlin's fiancé. That confirmed Michael at least knew someone close to the victim. But despite this connection, investigators couldn't find anything concrete to link him to Caitlin's case. While Michael was sitting in jail awaiting trial for Ellie's murder, one of his cellmates came forward with a tip. He claimed that Michael had confessed to killing another woman named Shelley and said he'd hidden her body near a river. But despite looking into the story, detectives weren't able to find any unsolved cases that matched the details the cellmate had given them. So, even though there were plenty of suspicious threads tying Michael to other possible crimes, he was never formally charged with anything beyond Ellie's case. When the case finally went to trial, the prosecution laid out a strong lineup of evidence pointing straight to Michael. They argued that the murder wasn't some tragic accident, it was planned. And there was no question about who was behind it. Meanwhile, Michael's defense attorney had nothing substantial to offer in his client's favor. So, instead, he tried to blame Ellie for what happened to her. He told the jury that Ellie struggled with anxiety and depression and took some medication for it, suggesting that the pills might have caused her death. Needless to say, it was a ridiculous claim. Prosecutors quickly shut that down, making it clear that Ellie's health had nothing to do with the fact that she was abducted from her own home and murdered. Even with a mountain of evidence stacked against Michael, the prosecution eventually offered him a plea deal. Maybe they were worried that, without something concrete like DNA evidence, the jury might hesitate and Michael could end up walking free. 2.5 years after Ellie's death, Michael finally took the deal and pleaded guilty in front of a judge. He showed up to the hearing with visible bruises, likely from fellow inmates, and gave a short statement. He claimed he never meant to kill anyone and said he regretted what he'd done. He also apologized to Ellie's family, who were present in the courtroom, and even managed to squeeze out a few tears. But, because of the plea deal, the judge found himself in a tough spot. 6 of the 9 charges had to be dropped, which significantly impacted the sentence, so Michael was given life in prison with the possibility of parole after 17.5 years. As unfair as that may sound, it doesn't guarantee he'll ever be released. The parole board can, and likely will, deny his release for decades. In a surprising moment, even Michael's own mother spoke during the hearing, urging the court to give her son the harshest sentence possible. So, the man responsible for Ellie's murder ended up behind bars, but that brought little comfort to her friends and family. Everyone close to her understood that it wasn't just Michael's actions that led to her death, it was also the complete inaction of the police. They had multiple chances to intervene and protect her, but failed every time. After her murder, the local police department launched an internal investigation. As a result, the officer who took Ellie's initial stalking report was suspended for just 40 unpaid hours. One final note, the case of Caitlin Markham, the one where Michael was once considered a possible suspect, was finally solved in 2023. It turned out the killer was Caitlin's fiancé, who had managed to stay under the radar for years. The fact that he was friends with Michael, and that both of them turned out to be violent predators, raises a chilling question. Did they know about each other's crimes? Or worse, were they committing some of them together? We'll leave a link to Caitlin's case in the description of this video. Share your thoughts in the comments section and don't forget to press the like button if you appreciate my video.